I almost died because when they would come to get arms from the station, they would just shoot up in the air because that was a way for them to create terror in the community. The bullet came into my home through the rooftop and it hit exactly where I was sitting. But at that exact moment, I got up to pick up the phone and the bullet hit exactly. So it would have hit me right in the head. And obviously, like being Eastern European, you don't have the conversation of like, how are you handling this emotionally?
Yeah.
It's like, you good?
How did you end up managing multi-million dollars asset for companies?
I was on a bus and I met this guy and he was telling me that he was interviewing for this role for this company called Powerhouse. It was this cool company that celebrities went to and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I want to interview there. Why not me?
How do you build a multi-million dollar business?
Entrepreneurship is like almost like an addiction.
Your story is quite powerful. You live in Canada, in Toronto, Canada, but you were born and raised in Albania. You had a beautiful life growing up with your parents until the war started. Can you take us back to your young memories of what it was like to growing up as a child in Albania?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny that we're talking about this today because I woke up this morning and I have the paid version of ChatGPT and I asked it, I'm like, I always have dreams where I'm always running away because I'm being like threatened, but it's always in my childhood home. And then I like went into the war, like explained that it was the war and it was like kind of analyzing my dreams that it's, it's trauma that's been yet resolved, which is weird because as you said, like I felt like growing up, I had like this simple, beautiful life, which was, it was filled with depth, but not with material depth, if that makes sense. Like we had very little. It's post-communism when I was born in 1992. Albania is very chaotic at this time. Nothing is really structured. And then 5 years later, that's when the civil war happened due to a Ponzi scheme. And then a year after that, there was the genocide in Kosovo. So for me, all of these instances, although at the time never felt impactful because it was just like I was a child, I wasn't really aware of what's going on. As an adult, I think I'm realizing the impact that they had on me that I never realized as a child.
Were you aware that you were living and growing in the middle of a war?
Honestly, I don't remember. Like all I knew is that if we heard there was like a criminal group that went in each city, so different cities had different criminal group. The group that was in our city, they had a motorcycle and it made this very specific B sound, like and because I live in a very small city, I could hear them from the other side of town. So if they were coming in, because I lived beside the police station and they would always drive into the police station to grab arms because the cops had just left the police station and there was a lot of arms there, we would just know that we'd have to go inside and I'd have to go to the washroom because the washroom had a cement roof while the rest of the house had like, I don't know if it's called shekels. So it was just like normal, like, oh, like we're playing outside in the backyard, we hear the noise, we go to the washroom and we run and hide. Like it was never like, I never really processed what was happening. It was just like, okay, gotta go inside, I hear the noise. But it was definitely, we ended up moving from the house when I almost actually died because when they would come to get arms from the station, they would kind of drive down the road and just shoot up in the air because that was a way for them to create terror in the community. But sometimes, the bullets would just go everywhere. So this time around, the bullet came into my home and I wasn't in the washroom. So it came through the rooftop and it hit exactly where I was sitting. But at that exact moment, my grandma had called and I got up to pick up the phone
Oh my
and the
God.
bullet hit exactly. So it would have hit me right in the head. So that evening, my uncle came and we like took the bicycle and we we drove through the olive fields in the middle of the night to like get away from my house. So
Oh my
that's the
God.
dreams. Those are the dreams I always have. I'm like running away in the olive fields from like terror.
Mhm.
But I net like consciously I don't feel that it affected me. It's really weird.
Yeah, definitely some trauma to uncover there. And For every, but for every person, I would say, and I am grateful that this is not something I have experienced, but for every person going through such traumatizing experience, either being aware of it or not, your subconscious ultimately knows something and remembers something,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I've been in therapy for 6 years, so we've dealt a lot with my childhood because obviously there's a lot to uncover. But I do wonder if there was something that happened that I can't remember, or like that I blocked out, that it's still coming because it's a reoccurring feeling and a reoccurring dream. I'm always at my childhood home. Like, what am like, there is definitely something that I have to uncover there.
And then your parents decided to move to Canada,
Yes.
definitely a better place to raise a child. Do you have any memories of you moving to Canada, and how was your early years in Canada?
Um, it was really difficult. I'm an only child, so when we moved here, both my parents, engineers, had to start working in factories, and not factories that were, in their profession. It was just like a logistics company and a company that made tissues. So they were working 12-hour shifts trying to make ends meet. I grew up at Weston and Lawrence, which is predominantly immigrant neighborhood. Definitely not super safe all the time, but yeah, it was difficult because I was alone a lot. Like back home in Albania, even though we didn't have much, I had my family and I had my friends. So at least I felt like I had a lot. When we moved to Canada, I was alone a lot. So I had to start using my imagination to keep me busy. And that's when I started writing and really getting into arts and creativity because I like had nothing better to do.
Oh, I can relate to that feeling because I was raised by a single mom and she was working 12-hour shift as well. So I was alone a lot. I was eating lunch alone, dinner alone, and then I would wait in the evening for my mom to come back from work. And so even though like I didn't develop my creative side or my artistic sides as such, where I found a comfort is in dancing. So I used to dance a lot, and then I wanted to become a professional dancer, but this is another life and this is another story. But like I can relate to your story, like wanting to fill that void with something that you can do with your body, with your imagination, and so on.
Yeah, I think I resented my parents a lot for that period of time because I feel like they like dragged me out of the comfort zone that I had, and they put me in this area, and they just left me there. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like, and obviously like being Eastern European, you don't have the conversation of like, how are you handling this emotionally?
Yeah.
It's like, you
This
good,
is you live, you breathe, okay, you're alive, that's okay, that's good, that's enough.
yeah, yeah. So but now I understand why they did it, and I'm grateful. And I think, wow, I can't believe they actually took such a chance for the and like such a risk to come here and go through all of the things that they went through for me. Because honestly, they could have been in Albania and they would have been fine. But I know that it was for me, and I'm grateful. But I think there was a lot of resentment that came for it because of the loneliness.
And you shared the story with me where your parents, they would still send you to Albania, so you keep that connection with your roots. But
Yeah.
something that you didn't know back in time is that once they had paid your flight ticket, they have no money left for them to spend
Yeah.
the summer.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember exactly, it was my first time back home since we moved, and I remember exactly what I was wearing when I got on the flight, and like how happy I was and like how happy my parents were. But I didn't know that they had $100 left for the rest of the month, and it was like the beginning of June that I had gone. So they only had $100 for the rest of the month after they had paid for my ticket and had paid rent, which was, I mean, on top of all the debt that they had that we had to pay from when we came. So I mean, I'm like over here living the dream, having my little CD player, trying to show off when I go back home. So I have no idea what's happening.
And so would you say that this experience, growing up in Albania and, moving to Canada and going through the challenges that almost 99.9% of immigrants go through, would you say that it has forged your drive to becoming the powerful professional and entrepreneur that you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I think as an immigrant, you always feel like you have something to prove, like you have to kind of make your way through. You have to make your mark. I mean, I'm not sure if this is what every immigrant feels, but I've been taught that going to school and working hard is kind of what you're supposed to strive for. My parents are definitely not big risk takers, even though they moved to Canada. They're not risk takers, so me opening my own business was definitely not something that I learned through them, but it was definitely the hard work ethic and wanting to be great or wanting to be good at what I did that I think that drove me from my background. But I don't know. I think maybe I don't know. I think it's also just who I am as a person. I'm very when I focus on something, it's like very detailed and intentional. I don't like doing things that are not intentional, like especially as I get older and have more awareness around the life I'm living.
And let's talk about your work ethic because you have quite some accomplishments under your belt, even though you are very modest and humble about it. You were responsible for the well being of a $10 million asset for WeWork.
Yeah,
And then in 2014, you joined the funding team to launch the co working space East Room, which is quite popular here in Toronto, which you helped grow to a multi-million-dollar business under 2 years, which is
yeah,
quite impressive. So tell us about your journey, like to how did you end up managing multi-million dollars asset for companies?
by accident.
Always, right?
Yeah, today. Um, I was on a bus and I met this guy, and he was telling me that he was interviewing for this role for this company called House. And it was this cool company that celebrities went to, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I want to interview there. Why not me? So I ended up interviewing and working for Soho House for 2 years. And that's where I met the founders of East Room. And they hadn't opened East Room yet, but they liked the hospitality and the attention to detail that I gave them and their family. So when they were thinking about opening the space, they were like, hey, I think you would be the right person to run it. I mean, mind you, I was 22 at the time, so running anything was beyond my scope of knowledge. But honestly, it really gave me a platform where I could try, and like we had it, like I had a little bit more of support system. I had the founders. I had I built a team. We had a community that we built. So that kind of it wasn't just me that accomplished those accolades, but at the same time, it allowed me to understand that I am capable of building things, and that's why I am in the position I am now, is because I got that try. And once you get that little bit of, I don't know what you call it, but it's almost like entrepreneurship is like almost like an addiction. Once you get a
Yeah.
little bit of it, you just can't go back. And I think, I went to work for WeWork, and ran a building for them. And it felt empty, and it felt like I was actually getting demoted rather than I was
Wow.
going to work for a bigger company, because I wasn't in charge in the way that I wanted to be in terms of like seeing my ideas through, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And for all the entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs listening to us, Jen, it's true what you're saying. Once you have, tried entrepreneurship, you can't go back. And I remember, like having this feeling as well when I was at the peak of my international career, where I was helping high profile people building empires. And at some point, I was like, but if I can build empires for them, why wouldn't do it for myself, right?
Yeah.
Of course, the journey is different, and being by
Very.
yourself for your doing it for yourself, it's like a complete entire
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
But you have the drive because you are capable of it, right?
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly it.
How do you build a multi-million-dollar business under
Uh,
2 years?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of culture, and I think that's something that a lot of brands try to accomplish, is building community and through culture and entertainment. It was by accident. I had a friend who was a musician, and one of the co-founders of Eastern was like, "Oh, I really like this guy," and I was like, "That guy, let's FaceTime him. Let's see what he's doing." And we're like, "Hey, do you want to perform at East Room?" And he's like, "Sure, like that looks cool. Like I'll do my release party there. And that kind of spiraled into us getting $100,000 from the shoe company Timberland, to put on shows. So then we were able to source international talent and source upcoming talent. So we became a platform for new music. And that brought in, that was our experimental marketing. Like, we didn't spend any money on digital advertising. I don't think they still spend any money on advertising. But it was through building the community that we were able to bring awareness to the business, and then fill the spaces of the co-working space. So community is key for anything. Yeah.
Yeah, community is the base of everything, but especially here, you talk about experimental marketing, but Eastwork is a co-working space. So the primary objective was probably not to seek like entertainment, or, to create revenues from entertainment, but the opportunity just popped up and you were able to seize it, right?
Yeah, we just, honestly, at the time we were all young. We opened East Room in 2014 or 15, like early 2015. Co-working wasn't a thing in Toronto. WeWork wasn't here. There was, the only co-working space I believe at the time was CSI. So when we built the space, we knew that we wanted an aspect of Soho House to it. We knew we wanted that hospitality, high touch, creative, entrepreneurial spirit in the business. And at the same time, the guys were 24 and 26, and I was 21, 22. So we had no idea what we were doing. So we thought, let's just throw things at the wall, see what sticks. And if it sticks, it sticks, and this
Love
stuck.
it.
The way that we received the sponsorship from Timberland was we DM'd the guy. Like, we're like, hey, you work in Canada for Timberland. Do you want to come by one of our shows? And he came and he was so impressed. So then he gave us the money to expand.
Wow, that's amazing. And this speaks to, the idea that we hold ourselves too much because we overthink things.
Exactly. What I did great working for East Room was I took every opportunity. I spoke to every person I knew. I try to activate my entire community with my own business. I think because it's mine, and I don't feel as, I don't know, you always feel like you're an imposter, right? So I feel like because it's mine, I'm afraid to ask for the same things that 21-year-old me did.
So let's talk about your business now. You are the founder of Everyday Chemist, which is a cosmetic brand, but you also have your own lab. Where the idea of owning a lab and starting a beauty brand started? Because it sounds to be so far away from the experience you have had as a professional woman.
Actually, this goes back to East Room. I had, all throughout growing, from when we moved to Canada, I started getting eczema. Then when I was in high school, I started getting acne, which got way worse when I was 20. Like, by worse, I mean like embarrassingly worse. Like, to the point that sometimes it like stopped me from leaving my house. So then I had to go on Accutane. And then when I did Accutane, my lips were so dry. They were peeling by the hundreds every day. And I tried every lip balm in the market and nothing worked. And my mom was working as a cosmetic scientist at the time. So I ended up asking her to make me something because I was not finding any relief. And for the next 8 years after that, I would hand out these little jars like this, these plastic jars with lip balm on it. And I would just hand them out to friends and family. So when COVID hit, I was like, hey, I've always wanted to build a cosmetic company. I've always wanted to do something with my mom. Let me start the direct to consumer line with zero money, zero experience in e-commerce, zero, like, like no experience whatsoever. So I took it. I decided to do it. And at the same time, I was also taking courses for human design thinking through IDEO, a partnership that they did with Acumen Academy. And part of the courses that I was taking, they were like, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. You should diversify what you're investing in. So if things go wrong, you have another opportunity. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I start another company? Because that I also don't have experience in, which is helping other entrepreneurs like myself develop great product. And I'm so grateful that happened, because EC Studios has become our main business now, where we help entrepreneurs. That's our business is twofold. EC Studios functions as R&D studio, where we develop, we support small batch manufacturing, and we also support any design or copywriting or anything that our brands may need. And then from the direct to consumer side, Everyday Chemist has kind of taken a side step where it's become our proof of concept. And with Everyday Chemist, we only release products that we believe have made a significant change in the market, whether form or function. So with lip grease or lip balm, we believe from a function perspective, it's the best that's out there for healing and moisturizing and all those things. And then for silky water, it's a unique format. It's half oil, half water. Doesn't really exist in the industry the way that we've done it. So that's kind of our thesis there.
I feel like whatever crossed your mind, this is something that you can do. So you have like this strong self-confidence or this strong self-belief that you can achieve whatever you set your mind to.
It's both. Like I don't know how to explain it because it's like that exists, but then there also exists this like I'm not good enough. And I think that feeling of not being good enough is what also creates this I am, me and my therapist always talk about this. It's like it's two sides of the same coin, it's two extremes. I'm trying to find balance because I do live in these extremes. It's both. Like it's like I am great and I'm gonna do the greatest things in the world, and then the other part is like I'm never going to get anywhere, like I might as well just give up today. So it's like you go be it's very frustrating having to navigate.
But I think what you are describing is just like the roller coaster of an entrepreneur, because like I feel the same, and I'm sure like a lot of entrepreneurs listening to us can relate to this, where one day you feel like you are on top of your game, you are the best, you are going to move mountains, you have the best idea in the world, and everything, and the following day you're crying yourself out, you don't know what's happening, and you don't feel like you are capable of doing anything, and the following day again you back at it again. I mean,
Yeah, it's a universal experience. I think whether you're an entrepreneur or you're just an employee, I deal with this. We hire young females mostly, especially in the area that we're kind of working in. There's a lot of females that are interested in. So we get to work with really talented young females, and they all feel like they're not good enough. And I see that from them. And then I also see that from my mother, who's an expert at what she does. She thinks she's not good enough. And I'm like, does anybody feel like they're good enough? No.
wow,
So
that's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, this is an internal battle that we have to fight with ourselves.
Yeah. And that's why I like to mentor a lot. And a big part of what we do is we give back in terms of giving discounts to women entrepreneurs or giving opportunities to female students. And something that I always tell them and tell my mom and tell anybody around me and tell myself is it's a choice at the end of the day. Not feeling good enough and feeling like you're great, but you could be better. They're the same, actually just a different way of looking at the same thing. So, you could wake up and be like, I just want to be better. And that's great. That's a positive way of looking at the world. When you feel like you're not good enough, you're already putting yourself at a deficit. So you're stuck in a hole. So I always try to tell them, it's just the way that you look at the world that really changes your experience of it.
Very true. Change your perspective on things and it will change the way you see the world indeed. Something that we haven't talked about, going back to your immigrant journey, is what do you feel is the biggest challenge that you have faced?
Honestly, a lot. I feel like I'm trying to like find words for it, but I could never go skiing. My grammar's not great. It's still not great. I don't speak a single language properly, whether that's Albanian English or Italian that I speak slightly. I feel like as an immigrant, you're kind of this like soul without a home. You're always in one place, always you're missing home, no matter where you're going. So it feels like this. I don't know. It really defines who you are as a person, and also not having money and having to like a lot of my friends that grew up here. At least they're starting from a place where their parents have they've built the building blocks for them to go ahead and do other things. I feel like not having money, and also my parents didn't have time to talk about philosophy after dinner because they were working, or they didn't have time to bring me to piano class because they didn't have time. So they didn't have money to afford it. So I feel like I missed out on a lot of things because we didn't have the resources. And then also I'm missing out on a lot of things because I always feel homesick.
100%. The last question I like to ask all my guests is, what would you like to be remembered for?
Oh wow, you did not prepare me for this one. I've been thinking a lot about this lately because, of course, working in the cosmetic industry, it's an industry of cents and dimes. People are, looking at numbers, and it is definitely a cent game. And I don't want to play in that world. I want to build great product for consumers, and that's kind of what I want to be remembered for, is that no matter what I do, it's done with intention and it's done with integrity. Because I feel like as an entrepreneur, those lines can get blurred really quickly if you want to succeed. And I don't want that to be my life. I'd rather do things with integrity and intention and create great products rather than be successful, if those are like the two choices I have.
We are seeing it quite a lot recently, especially for the successful gurus and successful people who have built their empire of success out of the Instagram, which is something different. But my point when it comes to integrity is now it's falling all apart because you can. This is not sustainable. Like being fake or pretending or scamming people or just not doing things with a good intention. Yes, you may win a lot in the short term, but in
Yeah.
the long term, it will always fall apart.
I don't know. It's hard. It's hard because I would like to, I'm a big believer that most people are good and good wins, but it's not always the case, unfortunately.
True.
There's, unfortunately, yeah, we're at the mercy of greater forces beyond our control. So we can only get ahead as far as, we can, by being great, by being good. But I think, being intentional and be like, I don't know. I'm hoping that matters, and that's something
It
that,
does. It
yeah,
does matter. Yes, it does. And we need more people like you. Otherwise, the world would be a sad place, even though that is not really wonderful wherever you go. But yeah, we need more people like you.
maybe a piece of advice for everybody out there that's an entrepreneur. When you fail, just keep going. I think failure is a part of it. So I think being resilient and being consistent is probably the keys to success. But it does take a lot of courage and self-belief to do it, and sometimes you just have to fake it.
Really? That's interesting, because I often say, like, don't fake it until you make it because it's not sustainable.
I don't know, because sometimes I do feel like I have to be delusional to believe in myself in the way that I do when things are not panning out the way that I wanted them to. You know what I mean? It's like you have
Yeah.
to trick your brain of not remaining in the bad. So you're like, I'm actually great. I'm going to do this. It's okay. Like, and also I think a lot of the fake it till you make it has to do with becoming that person. You're not faking it. You're just becoming the person you want to be before you're there, you know?
Yeah, from an introspection perspective, yes. I feel like the way I see fake it until you make it is more like, pretending like towards other people that you are someone that you are not, rather than your perspective, which is like tricking your mind and having positive talk to say like, oh, but you can do it, you are doing it, and you have what it takes to making it happen. So it's
Yeah.
it's a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
The world is how you look at it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Flavia.
Thank you so much, Doreen. I'll see you soon.